Episode 32.
This is John Pollock, the CEO of Financial Gravity, and this is a Small Business Puzzle podcast.
Struggling to get your business online? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Small Business Puzzle podcast. Now, here's your hosts, Michael and Teresa Blaze.
Welcome to the Small Business Puzzle podcast. I'm Michael, and I'm here with my better half and my wife, Teresa.
Hello, everybody.
So, announcements. The big announcement we made last week. Just want to remind you about that.
We are going to be speaking at Podcast Movement. If you're not going, why not? You should be going, period.
Absolutely. If you have any interest in podcasting or business, you need to be there.
No kidding.
It will change your life. Trust me. It changed ours.
Yes. There's nothing like a conference, period. I don't care what anyone says. There's absolutely nothing like a conference, and you need to go. So, that's it. Mike, do we got anything else?
Nope, that's it at the moment. So, with that, let me tell you about our guest for today. I hope you guys have been enjoying these interviews. I know we've enjoyed going through them. Learned a lot, actually. Especially if you haven't heard the Richard Chapo episode, check out sbppodcast.com/3131. He was talking about internet law and how it affects small business, and it was quite an eye-opener.
Indeed it was. So, Mike, why don't you read the bio for our guest?
Her name is Diane Gardner. Diane Gardner is an expert tax coach, Quilly Award recipient, and best-selling author whose proactive planning approach gives her clients a leg up on Uncle Sam and helps them dodge that proverbial tax bullet.
And we all know we don't like tax bullets, so, nice to dodge those every once in a while.
Diane saves small business clients between $5,000 and $50,000 in as little as 60 minutes. So with that,
on to the interview.
Good morning, Diane. Welcome to the Small Business Puzzle podcast. How are you this morning?
Doing fantastic. Thanks so much for having me on your program today.
We're really glad to have you. So, as I understand it, your expertise is taxes.
Yes, and in the fun side of taxes, where I get to be a tax superhero instead of the deliverer of bad news.
That's a good thing.
Wait. Let me understand this. Did I hear right? Did you say taxes can be fun?
You bet. You didn't know that?
No. Last I heard, they were part of the implemented government torture devices.
Right, like getting a root canal, I know.
Yeah. You mind explaining that one?
You bet. When I work with my clients, I get to be a tax superhero because we are helping our clients plan their way to a lower tax liability. And so that's where it becomes fun, is we've put together a plan, and then at tax time, when we're actually preparing that tax return, we get to see how close to that plan we actually came, and did we make our target of the estimated tax savings that we had set up for that client. So everything we use is IRS approved and court tested strategies right out of the IRS code, but it makes it fun because you actually get to see, hey, did we accomplish our goal?
That's awesome.
That's,
actually.
Yeah.
We're not at a position where we've needed those strategies yet, but we have something in common. My dad was a bookkeeper for over 20 years, so I got the pleasure of watching him do tax returns for his clients, and he actually taught me how to do taxes. And, I do ours, and I've done it for different people over all this time. So, I have a pretty good idea of some of the strategy that you're doing, obviously, but it's cool that you're doing that, and I'm sure your clients are ecstatic about their results. Saving money is always a good thing, and nobody wants to pay the IRS more than they have to.
You bet. And to date, we've been able to save our clients $1.122 million in tax, which is money they would have given to the IRS, and they didn't need to do it.
Oh, congratulations on that.
With that said, let me ask you this. You said that there were some things that people can do to save money on their taxes. What are some of those things?
Well, we like to take a look at something as simple as the entity type that the business is operating in, because a lot of times you outgrow your entity type that you start out in when you first start out in business, especially if you're on a big growth curve. and your business is taking off and you're growing and you're starting to make some money, and maybe you started out in business as a sole proprietor just because you didn't really know what you should do, so you really didn't do anything. And now you're making some money, and now you're paying a ton of taxes. And something as simple as picking a better entity type can save you thousands of dollars a year in income tax.
Well, that is I'm really glad we had you on, Diane, because I actually have a question about that particular thing. Because we're sole prop right now. But when do you switch from being a sole prop over to being an LLC or being a C corp or an S corp or some other kind of corp?
Well, Mike, there's lots of things that go into that. We like to do what we kind of call an entity analysis. And in that analysis, we look at all types of areas in your business. We're looking at, does this business need some liability protection? Are we working in that arena where now we've subjected ourselves to the potential for losing some personal assets if something was to go wrong? How important are fringe benefits to this business? Do we need to look at the ease of entry or exit, leaving or starting a business? We need to look at a lot of those areas in addition to just the tax reasons, because tax reasons alone is not just enough reasons to change an entity type. So we look at all these different areas, and based on that, a lot of times, depending on the state that my client is located in, a lot of times we will look at a limited liability company, because most of the time they really need some liability protection. And now I'm not an attorney or anything like that, but the IRS code gives them, or actually it's a state law, gives them their liability protection. And sometimes that is huge to the business, depending on their type. And then in addition to that because they are now operating as a limited liability company, they can act like a sole proprietorship, or they can act like a general partnership. They can act like an S corporation, or they can act like a C corporation. So now we have choices. And so then we take a look at which one of those choices might give them a better tax output. And a lot of times it is the LLC acting like an S corp that allows us to save a bunch of self-employment tax on somebody's net profit. And that's where the magic starts happening.
Well, when we grow to that point, we will definitely bring you into the picture and see if you can work some of your magic for us.
Right. And it's so much fun to do it and just watch the results that we can get for people.
I mean, because currently as it stands, we get tax refunds based on how much money we make. But when does it shift from that to having to pay the IRS?
That all depends on what else is on your tax return. So if one of you is still working a full-time job to where you have some W-2 income, you might continue to get some tax refunds for a while. I know when my husband and I got married about 8 years ago, he was used to getting that refund because he had W-2 income, and he married somebody with a business who has a profit, and all of a sudden those refunds were gone. And he was like, that wasn't very nice this tax season compared to what he was used to getting. So it just kind of depends what else is sitting out there on your tax return.
Well, the thing I think it gives us the refund right now is our earned income credit. That's where we're getting our refund from.
Right. And once, I'm assuming you guys have some children to generate that earned income credit.
Yeah, we got a rugrat.
Yeah, once that child reaches, I think it's 18, then you start losing your earned income credit and your child tax credit, and things start becoming a completely different story on your tax return.
Now, just to be clear, four-legged feline children don't count, right?
Correct, unless they have a Social Security number.
Oh, dang. Had to try.
I know. Clients try all the time, but got to give me that Social Security number, and I want to see a copy of the card.
Well, she's as much of a child as our two-legged one. So, okay, let's say that, now obviously this is not our situation, but let's say someone is listening, they are an LLC, or maybe they are a corporation or whatever, and they gotten hammered this last tax season due to, previous regulations, previous administrations, that kind of thing. The question then becomes, what can they do to better save money right out the gate?
Well, there's lots of different choices. Probably the biggest savings that they could do fairly quickly would be to invest in some sort of a retirement planning program. We've got programs like a SEP or a Simple or a 401k. They all have their pros and cons depending on the size of the business and how many employees they have and how much money they actually want to contribute. SEPs are limited to about $12,500 and 401ks go all the way up to about $54,000. So depending on the size of the business and some of that stuff as to which type of a retirement plan might be better for them. But that's probably going to give them the biggest change to their bottom line as far as taxable income goes. Otherwise, we have a lot of smaller strategies, things like hiring your children to work in your business, or maybe you're helping to support some other family members, whether it be a parent or whatever. I know in my case, I help out my mom. So she has worked in my business for, 35 or 40 years or whatever. And I allow her to do various things around my office, and in exchange, I give her a paycheck. Well, if I wasn't having her come in and help in my office, I would still have to help her out financially because she's a widow and she's living on just Social Security, and so she needs that extra little help. So by allowing her to work in my business and finding some things for her to do, I'm able to take what would be an after-tax deduction, which is not a tax deduction of any sort, and move it into a pre-tax position and put her on my payroll here in the office. And I do have her fill out a timesheet, and she has a job description, and we pay her just payroll just like we do everybody else. And that allows me to basically deduct that help that I would be giving her anyhow. So it makes a nice strategy for people who are helping other family members, whether it's younger children, whether it's children that have come home to roost, whether it's your parents, grandparents, whoever it might be that you're having to supplement a little bit with that help to find a reason for them to work in your business. See if you can't come up with a way and then put them on payroll.
That is a seriously cool concept that you can actually do that versus, in other words, so that they can continue to contribute and continue to earn income and feel appreciated.
And still have their dignity.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of, oh, you poor parent, let me help you out. It's, hey, Mom, why don't you come work with me and, I'll pay you a salary. And yeah, I could totally see that.
Yeah, my mom helps fold the newsletters that we send out to our clients. She takes out the trash. She does shredding. She waters our plants. I mean, it's all stuff that somebody needs to do, and she gets paid for it. And it helps her, and it helps me. So it becomes a win-win for everybody because I don't know how well she would take me just dropping money in her bank account every month.
Right.
She might not like that real well.
Now, I do have a question. With the previous Supreme Court ruling regarding taxing, regarding corporations being able to donate to different causes, I'm talking about the Hobby Lobby case. My question is, has tax law spoken to if you want to support a cause, whatever that cause may be, as a company, can you deduct that from your taxes?
I'm going to give you the standard accounting answer of it depends. So, there's a lot of factors that come into play, potentially, but depending on the factors in your business. If you're an S corp and you contribute to a charitable cause of any sort, that contribution won't be reflected in the net profit of the organization, or that comes through on your K-1, but it does come through on the K-1 and it goes straight to your Schedule A or your itemized deductions. If you're a C corporation, it depends on the amount of net profit that you have and some other factors. There's a formula that we go through to see how much of that is deductible. So it depends.
So it doesn't sound like it would really help somebody who's in a sole proprietor situation.
Sole proprietor, it is not deductible on your Schedule C. It goes straight to your Schedule A, your itemized deductions. So it does not help reduce self-employment tax.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, so that's why accountants are always telling you it depends on all these different factors.
Let me ask you this. This is a little off the subject, but if you're in a business and let's say you're just getting started with that business and you know a little bit about accounting. I have a degree in business administration. I've taken a number of accounting courses, so I understand the process of accounting. I won't call myself an accountant, and I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. So, but that being said, when should a business hire an accountant?
My personal philosophy on that is as soon as they decide they're ready to go into business. So basically before they open up their doors for business.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of decisions that need to be made right up front that I see people blindly making these decisions and not having enough information to make them well. And then they pay for it down the road. Now, it doesn't mean you have to go out and spend, thousands of dollars with an accountant, but to sit down with somebody at the beginning, hey, I'm planning on opening up a business. This is what I'm planning to do, and get some guidance. Just kind of find out, what are the rules? What are the laws? What is my state laws? Some of the things that I'm going to have to know about. What are the requirements for maybe sales tax, or what are the requirements if you're going to hire employees? Some of that kind of stuff. What about workers' comp? What about all these things that hit a new business owner? And most of the time, they've never encountered them before, and so it's all new foreign territory for them.
I appreciate that. Okay. What about a CPA?
In my opinion, you want to find an accountant who understands your business, understands your industry, who is somewhat entrepreneurial, and is proactive as far as being able to look for various types of tax strategies and tax deductions for you. Therefore, in my humble opinion, it doesn't matter if that person's a CPA, an EA, that type of thing, because it all depends on what is their specialty. Because a lot of times some CPAs do specialize in tax, but others don't. So just because they're a CPA doesn't mean they're going to give you the best answer. Same thing with EAs. Most of them specialize in tax, but some of them do some other stuff, some financial planning and some things like that. So you want to find that person who's a good fit. At one of the chapters of my book, Stop Overpaying Your Taxes, we have a chapter on how finding the right accountant is a lot like dating. And so we have some questions and stuff in there for people to ask to help them find the right accountant.
So EA, I'm not familiar with that one.
EA is an enrolled agent, which is what I am. We are licensed by the IRS to prepare taxes and represent clients in all 50 states. And so our focus is income tax because we take basically a 2-day examination on just income tax. Where a CPA's exam, they have one section on income tax, and then they have sections in other areas as well.
Right. Okay. All right. I had never heard EA before, so I appreciate you clarifying that.
Yeah. And you'll see EA letters behind somebody's name, and that's an enrolled agent.
Interesting. Let me just ask this. So, based on everything you said, so should a person start out as a sole proprietor, or should they jump right into a C Corp or S Corp or whatever the corporations are?
I would say that depends on the type of business that you're doing. And I'll just back up and do a quick little example. Let's say you decide you're going to open an auto repair shop and you're going to just do brake jobs. That's all you're going to do. Well, what kind of liability could go along with that? Like a ton, couldn't it? And so that kind of a person should never be a sole proprietor because they fix somebody's brakes. That person gets out on the interstate and has an accident. You're going to get named in that lawsuit. Flip it around to a professional. Maybe it's an attorney. Maybe it's a doctor. Maybe it's a coach or a consultant of some sort. Can you foresee the time when the advice you give somebody may end up causing something to backfire? And now your personal assets are at stake. So maybe that kind of a person should never start as a sole proprietor. You got to just kind of stop and think about worst case scenarios. If this happened and something went wrong, what could happen to my personal assets? I know myself, I started out as a sole proprietor. In hindsight, I should never have done that. But I didn't know any better back then. I was fresh out of college. I didn't know anything. What they taught you in college just wasn't real life. Things have changed a lot. We didn't used to live in such a litigious society as we do now. Now everybody wants to blame it on somebody else. So you want to really take a look at what type of industry are you in? What type of services and products are you selling as to what type of potential liability could there be?
I think for us, we're selling information products, we're selling our services, and we're selling, affiliated products.
So depending on the type of information you're selling, you might be totally fine. But if you're selling a product that is going to change, the way somebody invests in the stock market and they lose it all the next time there's a downturn. You might not be in a very comfortable position if there was not some liability protection. So you just got to kind of stop and think.
I happen to agree because, we do things that affect people in the sense of, their website and that kind of stuff. But, we've had our fair share of run-ins with not so nice clients. And, you bring that up and it just makes me think, well, maybe.
Right. Have a good insurance program. But this is like the second step beyond your insurance.
So our audience is entrepreneurs, podcasters, and small business owners. If you had a room of us in a hotel room, let's say, and you had the opportunity to give them advice, what advice would you give them?
Make sure you have a good, strong, proactive accountant on your team. Somebody preferably who has the letter CTC behind their name, which is Certified Tax Coach, because that type of a person tends to be a little more on the entrepreneurial side. They're going to be proactively looking for ways to help you take advantage of legal strategies and deductions and credits and that type of thing. They're going to be the type of person who's going to come to you and say, hey, how come I'm not seeing this on your tax return? Or, hey, how come I'm not seeing that? Or did you know you could do this? Things like hiring those kids or making sure that we're taking advantage of deducting all of our auto-related expenses or our meals and entertainment expenses, or things like renting your home to your business for a meeting or something along those lines and being able to do that tax-free and not have to pick that income up personally. There's just so many little strategies like that out there that those of us who've been trained as proactive tax coaches are watching for and looking for that your average accountant isn't, because they've not had that additional training.
I have a question, because this is something that I've kind of run into a lot. And when, if ever, should you incorporate, say, in Nevada versus your own state?
Generally, for the most part, you probably want to incorporate in your own state unless your own state's laws are weak as far as that liability protection, and Nevada actually offers a stronger liability protection side of it. Otherwise, just because you incorporate in a state like Nevada or Delaware or someplace like that, it does not save you on income tax, because you still must pay tax to the state that you live in unless you live in a state that doesn't have income tax. So it's more for the liability reasons, but then you got to stop and think, if there is a problem, you have to go to that other state for any court proceedings that might happen. It's something you're going to have to involve travel time in, time being away from your business, that type of thing, to be able to take advantage of their whatever they might have in the way of additional liability protection.
So that's not something that an authorized agent would be able to do?
That I'm not sure. That would be a question for an attorney. I really don't know.
What's interesting to me is how the line kind of blurs between accountant and attorney when it comes to some of this stuff. It's really very interesting.
Right, yeah. It is, and we try hard to stay on our side of the line and not cross over into their side.
The other thing that I'm finding interesting is the shifting policies, especially with one administration going out, one coming in. You're sitting there going, well, how are things going to change?
Right, and we don't know for sure yet. We'll know after a little while, but there's a lot of talk right now. And I would think within the next 6 months to a year, we'll know a whole lot more than we know right now.
Okay, so here's a question for you. Now, I know that with the Affordable Care Act, the people that were not covered by Obamacare are subject to penalties by the IRS this year. So that being the case,
they have not been enforcing it, because the Congress did not give the IRS the ability to enforce it. So the way it's been working the last couple of years is that penalty sits on your tax return. If you have a refund, they suck it out of your refund. But if you owe money, they cannot go after you to collect it. So they can't lien your property or levy your bank account, because Congress never ever gave them the ability to go after collection on it. They just gave them the ability to put it on the tax return. that's something that most people, weren't aware of. A couple of my clients owed the penalty. They did not pay it. They got a letter saying that you owe it. And to my knowledge, they have not gotten any other letters because they have not brought anything more into me. I'm sure if they would have got, some more threatening type letters, that they would have been back in my office saying, what do I do? Because we had told them, Congress has not given them the ability to collect it in a collection setting.
I appreciate you sharing that, because that's not something that I knew.
Yeah, I was not aware of that.
We're hoping to see that penalty repealed and that there won't be a penalty in the future, but, time will tell how far they will take that.
The thing that got me on that whole thing is when the Supreme Court, when they tried bringing this whole thing to the Supreme Court said, well, it's constitutional because it can be a tax.
But then on the other side of their mouth, they weren't calling it a tax. This is not a tax. So, yeah.
I don't think anyone saw that coming.
I tell you, the next 4 years are going to be interesting. As a business owner, I'm excited about what's going to happen in the next 4 years. I think it's going to be really good for the country. So we'll just have to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
Do you have any final suggestions for our audience, business owners, podcasters?
Well, I'd like to offer a free copy of my book, The 10 Most Expensive Tax Mistakes That Cost You Thousands. We've touched very lightly on just a couple of those. We've talked about entities, and we've talked about hiring some family, and a little tiny bit about meals and entertainment and auto and stuff. But there's a lot of just these basic strategies that people can put in place. And so we give this book away constantly out on my website. We just ask people pay some shipping and handling on it. The website is www.taxcoachforyou.com. They can definitely order a free copy of the book. And then we also like to give a free tax analysis, which means if you will send us your last 2 years' income taxes, personal and business, if you have both, we'll be happy to take a look at them and see if we can see some of these mistakes and missed opportunities. I get the privilege of getting to amend tax returns on a very regular basis for people and get them money back just simply because their prior accountant missed certain things or wasn't aware of the ability to deduct certain items. And so we have those conversations with people. And then depending on where they're at in their business, then if there is significant tax savings for them, then we like to look at putting together a customized tax plan that will set them up to be able to save taxes year after year after year after year.
That's fantastic. Diane, what is the best way, other than your website, that people can get in touch with you?
Well, my website is the absolute best way because if they leave me a message there, it comes straight into my email. So it's www.taxcoachforyou.com. And if you leave me a message at all, it comes straight to my email. And I try to get back to people as quickly as possible. Now we're just, at the time we're recording this, we're teetering on the edge of tax season starting. So my response time may not be as quick as it normally is, but we still try to get back to people very quickly and see if we can't answer their questions, set up that free tax analysis, get the book out in the mail to them, whatever it might be, because this is important information and people need to know this.
Thank you so much for that offer. I'm quite sure a lot of our audience will take advantage of it. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, you're welcome. It was my pleasure. I enjoyed visiting with you guys.
With that, you have been listening to the Small Business Puzzle Podcast. I'm Teresa.
And I'm Michael.
And we are out.
You've been listening to the Small Business Puzzle Podcast. To catch all our past shows, visit sbppodcast.com.